Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. The journey continues today on November 4th, 2022 at approximately 1:12 p.m. PST. I've been looking at an awful lot of things, but today I really want to take a look at individual identity as compared to racial identity. And how to... Okay, we'll try that again. Just checking. Apparently it didn't want to create the stream, so we're trying again. And I don't even know if it's running right now. Okay, hopefully it is. So let's try this. Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on November 4th, 2022 at approximately 1:12 p.m. PST. I want to take a look at identity, not just personal identity, but the comparative between individual identity and racial identity. Now, where to begin? Well, where to begin is pretty cut and dried. Take a look in the mirror. That's where you start on the physical side. But understand, when we are looking at individual identity, every single one of you is unique in your own right. What you have to do is look at what is important to you. As I've mentioned many times before. Okay, waiting for that to come up and running, but we will see. How you doing? I believe that is Kira. It is. Welcome, Kira. Glad you made it. I'm just waiting for things to come up and running properly so that I can get certain things done. The biggest factor that we have to look at where it comes to individual identity is every single person is an individual. Every one of you. Okay, and every one of you is unique in your own way. Now, we can take a look at the overall, we can look at the minor, but I follow only 3 laws. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. And energy out, energy in. Now, whatever laws, whatever guidelines you follow, I would love you to take a look at them and compare them to those 3. Because those 3 laws, thus far, I have not found an exception. But every law I've taken a look at, every guideline that I've ever come across fits into one of those 3. And the one I'm really looking at right now, okay, the one I'm currently looking at is pretty black and white. Okay, be true to yourself first, meaning take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you content? Are you happy with the way things are in your life? Not is everybody else happy with you. Okay, that's just the reality behind it. Okay, and yes, I'm still looking for things to work here. I had a problem the other day. Went to go live, and the computer decided it was going to completely scramble things. So we didn't actually go live. What am I looking at here? The reality, we do not need the extra noise here. Now, I've been looking at it, and the reality behind it all is that we have to take a look and go, okay, everybody is unique. However, as my father used to put it, it would be a real boring world if we were all identical. Now, let's take a look at that for a moment, shall we? People talk about the clothes making the person. Well, the saying is the clothes make the man, but I'll tell you it applies to women as well. But if that were in fact the case, would it not stand to reason that everybody in the military, everybody in a private school, everybody in the postal service, because they wear uniforms, okay, even everybody in first responders, if clothing makes the person, okay, then would it not stand to reason that all of these people would behave exactly the same way? Okay, so we take a step out of that and look at the individual. That's you. Take a look at your own life. Are you content with it? Okay, what is making your identity? What is making you you? And it will be different for each one of you. Now I've had to come to the acceptance. Hey Joe, how we doing? Well, happy belated birthday. Did you do the wise thing and not get a hangover? No, those I understand those are a pain, at least in the head. So I gotta ask, because this goes completely sidetrack here, Joe. But curiosity, and you don't have to answer if you don't choose to. What was your drink of choice yesterday? I used to I did used to drink. I'd kill a 26er a night without even blinking. Okay. It's amazing, Joe. I didn't realize I had that many years on you. Maybe it's just I'm getting old. I don't know. Probably older than I'd like to be. But the important factor, from my standpoint, when we take a look at individual identity, you take a look at whatever you're content with. Is what you're doing, is it helping other people? More importantly, is it not intentionally hurting other people? Okay. Now, I came to the conclusion the other day. I've been looking at a number, as you know, I'm writing all kinds of books right now. I had to put yesterday on hold because, well, the computer just completely screwed up. I hit one wrong, but guess it didn't screw up. I hit one wrong button and then it never kicked back in. Net result, by the time I figured out how to get around it, the problem was I didn't have time. So I just looked at it and went, okay, enough is enough. Technology and I just don't get along. I'll use it as best I can, but I'm just not going to be working with it too terribly much. Okay, so the important factor from my end, when you're looking at the individual, ask yourself, are you content with you? That would be the important part. Nice. Yeah, that'll get you a little bent out of shape in a hurry. I remember days, well, quite a number of them, that I did find a cure to hangovers myself. When I was drinking, I never sobered up. I never drank on the job, but I'll tell you, I was still bent half the time I got to work. But I do hope your birthday went well there, Joe. When you take a look in the mirror and you go, I am content with it or I'm not. I wasn't content with it. Okay. Now, about a week and a half ago, okay, it came to my attention that I had still too much clutter I did not require. So I've been taking hold of books and what have you, old books that I no longer require that I know I'm not going back to. Okay. One of the books I've decided I'm not going to be writing, actually two of them, is a rewrite on numerology, which has some critical flaws in it, and on astrology, which also has some critical flaws. If there is an astrologer that desires to know where the flaws are, I will absolutely discuss them with it, or if I get enough requests to do it here, I may well deal with it. But the fact of the matter is, for me, I cannot explain in functional terms why it is the thing that I see the flaws in these things, or more to the point, how it is. The why is because they're there. But that's me as an individual. Now, you'll notice, at least assuming you can see, you'll notice, I am Caucasian. Okay, that makes me part of that race. However, Caucasians, Orientals, Germans, your Middle Easterners, okay, what people call North American Indians, okay, all of these people are different races, granted, but they are all, every one of you is a member of the same species, okay. Now, rest assured, where it comes to the global side, people talk about racism and prejudice and what have you. But we got to realize globally speaking, from my understanding, Caucasians are actually the minority. They are not the majority, contrary to many people's belief. Okay, so we take a look at the individual. As individuals, we have just over 8 billion people on the planet right now. Okay, now for those of you that have come to the conclusion that, oh, we have a land shortage, go for a drive in the country one day. If you see land, then we don't have a land shortage. What we have is a staggering amount of greed. Okay. like I said, Joe, where it comes to the cemeteries, they're great peaceful places until you can see the ghosts, at which point they're no longer all that peaceful. Although I do have a lot of friends laying around in them. But the reality of it is that people go through, when people are losing somebody, individuals handle it in a different fashion. I remember years ago there was a gentleman I used to play Dungeons and Dragons with, and we would play 5-6 days a week together. Okay, whole group of us used to get together, and then one day this chap up and he had an accident and he up and died. So I was asked to provide moral support for one of my friends, for one of our mutual friends, and go to the open casket. Okay. And the funny part about it is I went there, and of course, most people were in tears. I'm sitting there waiting. I went through the whole thing, went through the open casket deal. And this friend walks up to me and goes, Keith, aren't you upset that our friend is gone? I looked at her and I went, no. I said, he's not gone. And she goes, but he's dead. I said, no, he's not. He's right over there, sitting on the back of the pew. And I kid you not, that's what I was seeing. He was right there. And of course, friend looks at me and goes, of all the people to bring here, for moral support, I had to pick you. I said, well, you didn't have to, but, I didn't mind coming by any means. Glad to hear that, Joe. Virtually anything that you're using that has some sort of toxin in it will wipe out T cells. However, this said, we have to remember again that neat little idea of everything in moderation. When you're looking at your life and you're going, I'm not content with the way it's going, I have to change my direction. This is what I've gone and done. Okay. As you can see behind me, okay, the shelves are getting more and more empty. That was really poor English. Okay, but identity is done by co-creating the environment around you. What makes you tick? What are you content with? Not do you agree with everybody else? Okay, Lord knows I don't. Okay, the reality is there is no way around it. Okay. For me personally, and this is just an individual thing, and it's why I don't expect people to necessarily get it. Okay. Is that I end up, when I look at any situation, I look at the positive, the negative, and the neutral all at the same time. Now, I tend to do my best to focus on the positive. It doesn't always work. Okay. But that's me personally. That does not reflect on anybody else in my race. Okay. It just doesn't. I do not expect people to follow the way that I think. That's just not going to happen. But I will tell you, the moment we start looking at any race, at any individual going, they're more important than the next person, there is a problem that is going to brew. Okay. Now, when you put people in an area, okay, all in the same area, this is what we look at where it comes to community identity. Okay, now racial identity covers the globe over and everybody that fits into that race. Okay, that is a racial community, but it breaks down into smaller things. Okay, you've got your locales, you've got your community, you've got the family. These are all different ways of identifying who you are as an individual. But it's up to you to decide if this is going to be something that is projected in a positive fashion or in a negative fashion. Okay. Now, one of the things I've been doing, because I no longer desire any of the clutter around me. Okay. I was supposed to leave the house today. Actually, this week, I don't think I left the house at all. Okay. And usually I get out at least 2 or 3 times a week. This week I didn't leave the house at all. I came home on Saturday and haven't left since. That's not entirely correct. I think I went out on Monday and got my son's lunch. Okay, but that was first thing Monday morning that I came home. Okay. And I haven't left since. Like I said, I personally am rather reclusive. Okay, will I talk to people? Certainly. But let me explain something very important. Talking to people does not mean you have to agree with them all the time. Okay, and this is where we run into a real big problem. Okay, is so many people have this brilliant idea that you have to do things the way everybody else says. Okay, politicians are fantastic at getting people to look at things the way they desire them to. This is one of their gifts. And you can call it a gift, you can call it a curse, doesn't matter. Okay, it's one of the things they can do well. Marketers do exactly the same sort of idea. They take a concept and they paint it to be real brilliant. Okay, I will tell you, yes, I paint some pretty intriguing concepts. Most of the stuff I'm doing, most of the stuff I talk about is getting written down. Okay, and I've just set things up so that within the next week to week and a half, I will hopefully have, well, let's call it 2 weeks. I'll hopefully have my Amazon store up and running. Okay. And in that way, I'll be able to start doing things a little bit more directly. But until then, I'm still wiping out stuff I don't require. Okay. These are all ways, like I will be upgrading I've talked about it before, about upgrading my clothing to a different style, to a more progressive style, if you will. Good afternoon, Nightmare. Glad you got it. Yeah, unfortunately, things have really gone sideways, technologically speaking, for me, but working on it. The reality of it is, and this is something that I'll just put out there for people that work hard, and take a look at this. The people that work really, really, really hard are not necessarily the ones making the big money. Now, don't get me wrong. I have a tendency of working way too much on occasion. And most of what I do ties together. Okay. But it is absolutely imperative that you find a job, find an income that you're content with, that you're happy with, not one that everybody else is happy with. Now, way too many people, in my opinion, they make their identity or arrange their personal identity around their job. Okay. My job is what I do for a living. My writing is what I do for a hobby, but none of them are my personal identity. Okay. And none of them are clearly my racial identity. Okay. Years ago, I was working for Dairy Queen, and the boss was trying to get people to work a little bit more effectively together. So he puts a questionnaire together, and I have no idea what the rest of the questions were. I know there were 10. But the fifth question he asked was, how do you relate to the other staff? And my immediate response was, I don't. I can tell you why they're doing what they're doing. I can tell you when they're going to shift gears, but I have no clue how to relate to them because I just don't operate that way. Now, when we can take a look in the mirror as individuals and go, I'm an individual, I'm very special myself, not better than anybody. I may have a talent that is more advanced than some people's, but I've got other talents that are less advanced. Prime example today, we had our inspection in our apartment today, to make sure nobody is a pack rat in this place. And of course, I was asked if there was any maintenance that needed to be done. And this will give me an idea how talented I am in this field. I looked at the landlord. I said, the only thing that needs done is I need to tighten the toilet seats up. But I've got to remove them first in order to clean them properly. I said, I haven't got a clue how to do it, really. Okay. Now, for many of you guys, and quite frankly, a lot of you women, that's probably one of the simplest things in the world to do. Okay. And I'm looking at it going, how do you go about it? But everybody has their talents. Everybody has their skills. Now, I've shown you guys this one. Okay, we'll start here. Okay, this particular book is the backbone. And of course, if you go to rkeithandrews.com, okay, you'll see the write-up on the books. You'll see the prices for shipping them out, that sort of thing. Okay, get in touch with me. There's a whole list of ways below this video on how to get in touch with me. But this particular book is the backbone of how I turned my life from where it was to where it is today. Now, I know a lot of you have seen this book, okay, Races of the Worlds. Now, this one covers 59 different races that I personally have dealt with, okay, face to face. You don't have to believe me, okay, you really don't. This is a reference manual, okay, and that's all it is. Well, that's all it is kind of understatement. I'm working on volume 2 of that. Now, when we go into these ones, okay, this is a series of novels I'm writing. Now, many of the races in these books, okay, you'll see the social interaction, but they are actually, the reference manual really kind of worked out accidentally to work hand in hand. Now, from my standpoint, it boils down to a simple issue. Okay, my identity is me. Your identity is you. What makes you happy? What helps you get out of bed in the morning? What do you think about? What is the thing that drives you to do things? Okay, now I know for an absolute certainty, in my case, that I do enjoy helping other people. I do enjoy educating. Problem is, I am very, in case you hadn't noticed, very direct. I refuse to lie to people to make them feel better. But because I'm as direct as I am, it can get to be a little complicated. Okay, now you have to ask yourself, would you rather, you yourself, not me, you, are you one of these people that tries to keep and to be, to phrase things in such a way it does not upset other people? Or are you one of these people that just goes, here's the way it is, you deal with whether or not you're happy about it? Okay, from my standpoint, I just cannot gauge it. I cannot say anything in such a way that nobody gets upset. Okay, so I just figured, to heck with it. I'll just stick to the truth as I see it. Okay, and my identity comes around how I feel about me, which is entirely where this whole sign came from. Okay, this particular sign, I am worth it. Now, of course, I've always said I do not have much in the way of a material creative side, but this is done with just a magnifying lens and, and obviously the wood and the sun. That's it. Now, I haven't done a lot of work on this lately, but I've got this sign here. Okay. I'm just going to put that up there before it gets out of hand. I've got that sign there. What the heck? Oh, okay. I've also got it hung right here. Okay. And the reason for that is, number one, it keeps reminding me of the same thing. Okay. Now, I also have that sign on cardstock, laminated, stuck on my fridge. And I've got another sign of that caliber that is on my front door. Okay, and the reason I do that is because, first of all, it keeps me focused on what is important to me. Okay, the other thing with it being on the front door and on my fridge, anybody that comes into my house gets the same reminder about themselves. And our identity is extremely important. The most powerful word in any spoken language, in any language at all, is the individual's name. That is how they are identified. Okay. And when you're treating people with respect and using their name, you will get a much higher response, a much more beneficial response rate. Okay. This is something they teach you in marketing and sales all the time. Politicians, this is one of their big challenges, is remembering who you've met, because people like it on the whole. They don't like being referred to as a race. They don't like being referred to as a community. They like, even in the tightest of communities, people on the whole from any race at all. Okay, any race. They prefer being identified as an individual. Okay. Now, it's not a question of what you relate to, okay, or what you identify as. You can identify as anything you like. If I chose to, I could sit here and go, look, I don't identify as a physical person at all. I identify as a lump of clay. Okay. And if that's what I choose to identify as, and if that's what I choose to say, this is what I am, who am I, who are you to say I'm not? If that's what you identify as, that's fine. But the thing we have to realize is that with that individual identity, you have to adjust your behavior to fit inside societal guidelines. Hence the idea of do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Okay, when you go into somebody else's community, okay, same as if somebody comes into your house, you quite frankly expect them to follow your rules, okay, your guidelines. The rest of the world is the same way. You're no different. Doesn't matter how much money you've got, you still got the same situation. Now, many people look at the material world and go, the more stuff you have, the more successful you are. Well, I'll tell you, I am reaching a point now in my life, and I hope this is getting through to some of you, that my success level is starting to skyrocket. I'm getting all the stuff out of my way, out of my possession, that I no longer desire to have. Okay. And the reason I'm doing that is because by getting rid of the excess clutter, by getting rid of the stuff that's in the way, I'm opening up the energy levels in my primary living space. And in this case, it also happens to be my primary workspace in order to be able to move forward. Okay. In order to get my life moving in the direction I desire it to. And as you do that, you'll find the same thing. The more people, the more of you that turn around and go, okay, I'm not content with my life, so here's a change I'm making. Now, before you get into any idea of how change can be difficult or how, we have to be, we've got to be, out in public and meeting with people. No, you don't. Okay, in my opinion, you really don't. I was told one day by somebody, and in all fairness, I forget who it was, but I was told by somebody one day, if I am not out there involved, talking to people, getting to interact with people in society, I'm not living. Okay. And bad news, I'm still breathing. Okay. I am happy to say that much as I ignore much of what goes on with society, because I've seen way too many horrific sides to it. But I was quite pleased that I was the first one in line when it came to voting in our last local election. I was literally the first one through the door. Okay. And as soon as I did that, I did that, then I went back and became a recluse again. I went out, I did what was necessary as far as society goes. And as individuals, you do have to stay on top of things one way or the other. This much I agree with wholeheartedly. You've got to know what's going on with the community around you. This is part of not identifying who you are. This is a way of simply interacting with society. And let's face it, there's a lot of people in society. Now, I've kept my circle extremely tight. Okay. But I've also reached a point in my life that I'm hoping that some of what I'm saying will ring for some of you before you have to go through a whole lot of struggle with it. And realize that being true to yourself does not mean being belligerent to other people. It does not mean badgering other people into believing what you say. Okay. I've thrown this out there before and I did my best to avoid it. But to be true to me, I can no longer do that. I was talking to a number of people the other day. And, quite frankly, it was on the religious side. And I asked them one simple question. Now, do understand, do I go to church? No. I don't go to church. I don't go to a coven. I don't go to a temple. I sit here. Okay. So am I going to tell you they're bad? No, I'm going to tell you wholeheartedly they're actually really good places to go. When you find people that you see eye to eye with, where you can get the emotional and the intellectual support that you seek. Okay. But they were trying to talk me into going to their church. I said, let me ask you one thing. I said, do you believe that God created everything? Right? And of course they went, well, absolutely. I says, great. We're on the same page thus far. I says, now, the other question, did God create evil? Absolutely not. I says, right there, we have an impasse. I won't be coming to a church while people are that confused. And here's the reason. If you create everything, and maybe I'm taking things too literally, I don't know, but this is me. In my opinion, if you create everything, then you had to create evil because evil is something. Now, I'm not going to go any further down that road. Okay. I've been told, all sorts of things that you're only, when I was growing up, if you didn't know how to work your way around a car, you weren't a real man. If you weren't really physically strong and involved in sports, you're not a real man. Bad news? Yes, I am. And we're not going to get into the anatomical side of it. The reality of it is there are only two physical genders. Now, you can find ways of separating them. Okay. There's all sorts of scientific ways. It's a shell game if you really desire to go there. Okay. Hey, world, glad you could make it. People can do people can see the world any way they desire to. Okay. It's absolutely up to you how you look at it. But when we're talking identity, take a look at how you see the world. Is your outlook, and your outlook cannot, by the way, your outlook in and of itself cannot be a problem. Okay. If you are propagating fear, negativity, anger, death, if you're doing all this, any of this sort of thing, then your words can be more devastating than the worst physical act. Okay. That's just the reality of it. Now, from my standpoint, the reality of it is do what you will, okay, as long as what you're doing is not deliberately, as in intentionally, hurting somebody else or causing a problem, like causing a big problem, then knock yourself out. But understand, as an individual, as an individual entity, as a member of any community or any society, you have to work with the people around you. The laws are absolutely critical that they apply to everybody. Fortunately, somebody came up with the good sense where it came to traffic of saying, okay, in Canada, the US, we'll drive on the right hand side of the road. And that's absolutely fantastic. Okay, cuts down on the number of accidents. But the rules of the road apply to everybody. The rules of social conduct should apply to everybody, but unfortunately, many people don't follow that. Okay, but we have to start looking at the world. If we desire this world to turn around into something better, okay, if we are going to do that, we have to take a look at this and really go, okay, how are we going to behave differently? Now, my generation, in my opinion, dropped the ball big time. Okay, we have let things go backwards as far as social advancement goes at a staggering level. And unfortunately, guys, it's up to you to straighten the problem out. I will do what I can. Many people my age are doing what they can to turn it around. But we've got to start realizing if we keep going down the separatist path that we're going down and isolating people, that is absolutely correct, world. What world is just typed into the chat room is all change starts at the ground floor. Be the change that you want to see. Now, the only difference in that I work with is I do not use the term want very often, primarily because of the fact it hiccups things. But the principle is the same, because what I do is be the change you desire to see. Okay, and the difference is this. And if you look back through my old videos, look up one with a subheading want. Okay, want itself, when you utter those words, what it does is create a sense of lack, a sense of want, or a sense of need if you're using that one. Thereby, okay, you're asking the universe to provide you with a lack of whatever it is that you want to have. Okay, so what happens is people go, I want to see this, or I want to have this. And they end up like, I really want to win the lottery. Okay, so they buy the ticket, they don't win the lottery, and they go, why not? I pray every day. I'm asking for what I want. Okay, the reason is because it creates a lack. The universe turns around and says, okay, you desire to experience a lack of winning the lottery. Have a happy. Here you go. You didn't win. Now, myself, I really did sit there for the longest time. I sat with junk all over the place. Okay. I used to have a staggering amount of junk around the area, but I've been getting rid of more and more of it as I go. One of the things I am currently working with, of course, is trying to get the computer, that's a bad idea, is figuring out how to get my computer to work properly. This, somebody told me one day, it's easy. I said, yeah, probably, once you figure it out. Unfortunately, to put that in perspective, I've been working with computers since 1979. They still don't work properly for me. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't watched that in a long time there, world. As in Star Trek Next Generation. The reality is, in Star Trek Next Generation, sad to say, I related most with Data or Worf. Okay, in the original Star Trek, I used to relate best to Spock. Needless to say, it didn't connect very well with a lot of people around me. But it's a great thing to have, to have racial unity. It's a great racial identity. It's a great thing to have a national identity. Okay. I feel for you, Joe. Mind you, from what I gather, okay, the amount of coffee I drink doesn't qualify. I was talking to a nutritionist one day, and to be clear, the coffee I'm drinking, most people with a 10 to 12 cup pot will put 3 to 4 tablespoons of coffee into that pot. I put 1 into that pot. So according to my nutritionist, I'm simply getting enough water. I don't like the taste of chlorine. So I'm simply getting enough water to make my system run properly. But it's very necessary. Like I got to admit, I take a look at the states. Okay, now I'm in Canada, so clearly not a United States citizen. Okay, but I will say one thing: the states, on the whole, whether this is true or not, I don't know. The way I see it, there is a staggering amount of national pride there, something that you should be proud of. Okay, and it's one word, it's one community. I mean, it is a democracy. You can say what you will about the political system, okay, because I've said a lot of things and most of them not nice. But when you're working with a democracy and that many different races of people, that many different individuals can live inside the same confines, okay, this is a good thing. That is something you should absolutely be proud of. I do wish the people across the globe would quit looking at the stars and going, the aliens gave us all this technology. Okay, when are the aliens going to come down and fix this? When is God going to come down and go, here, problem solved? Okay, I really wish people would get it through their heads on the whole. You have free will, you have free choice, but what you don't have is freedom from consequence. And if what you're promoting is fear and degradation to any individual, any group, okay, the group or the individual is not necessarily the problem. You may be. Okay, if you're the one talking about how bad a group of people are, okay, prime example. Okay, now I identify myself as being very open minded. I treat people as I desire to be treated. Now, am I perfect at it? Not a prayer. Okay, but I was going by the park. Actually, it'd be a couple of years back now. Okay, I was walking by the park close to me, and somebody turns around. Somebody turned around, was walking by me, and they pointed. I saw 2 families, one Caucasian, few kids, few adults. They were playing catch, with baseballs. They were playing catch with frisbees. They were having a picnic. About 50 yards away was another group of dark-skinned people. I have no idea if they were Middle Eastern, if they were South Pacific. I have no idea. They were darker skinned. Okay, clearly not Caucasian. And I'm walking by this other Caucasian. He looks at me and he goes, "Why do they let those terrorists into this city?" Now, this other group of people was playing catch with baseballs, with frisbees. They were having a picnic, just like the Caucasians. Now, were the dark-skinned people, were they the problem? No. The problem was the genius I was talking to that identified them as terrorists because they were a different color. Okay. I had another situation where this individual, and he was dressed in clothing that I wouldn't wear, except on maybe Halloween. But hey, he had a 2-foot rooster cut. Okay, actually, I think they call it a rooster cut. I might be wrong, but he had 4 spikes of hair, really, really long spikes of hair that were set up on top of his head. Obviously, okay, and the person I was walking with, looks at them and goes, "Oh, can you believe the way that guy's dressed?" I quietly looked at them and went, Tell me, are you upset about the way they're dressed because they're dressed that way or because you don't have the courage to dress that way? Conversation dropped, the person walked off. From my standpoint, it's very simple. Your individuality, your personal identity is extremely important. Okay. It just boils down to you've got to be content with you. But this does not mean that everybody else has to be content with the way you look at the world. Okay. Yeah. Sadly, Joe, I agree with you. Coffee does. I'm lucky, sort of. Coffee doesn't stain my teeth. My teeth are already 3/4 gone. And since I can't go to a dentist, I am in the process of trying to rebuild them in another fashion. But that's me. My health is, it's important to me. But, the reality is I don't have time to get sick, so I don't bother. Okay. See, I still have fun there, world. I know people keep talking about trolls. I know what they are. Okay. Do I have any clue on how to deal with them online? No. Okay. I do appreciate it when I make a comment about somebody that's writing something in the chat room. I really appreciate it when somebody pipes up and goes, that's just a bot. Don't worry about them. Now, if I knew how to stop them, I would. Okay. Because I know it's a pain in the neck from my standpoint. Okay. But I look at that and go, this is somebody that wants to make a name for themselves. This is one of the biggest things we have to remember. What I like seeing is the people that stand up and promote the positive things in life, the positive changes that are happening. Okay. The nice little part of it, of the whole situation, is that when we start treating people as we desire others to treat us, things become a much more beneficial, a much better world for most people. Okay, that's just the reality of it. But we have to realize we're going to have to work together. Now, in answer to you, if you're most of you are recognized, but for those of you that are either outside of the chat room and just listening in, or come and catch this later. The reason I keep looking over to my right is because this is another video right here, another monitor right here that I can read more easily than the one over there. Okay. But we have to realize individual identity is critical. Absolutely. Be who you are. Okay. But it is quite frankly irrational to expect everybody or even the majority of people to change their world for yours, for the way you identify yourself. Okay. Other people have their own identity, and you have to ask yourself, if a group of people identify themselves in one fashion, can you really expect them to all of them identify you in a different fashion? Okay. People look at each other. Now, there's been a lot of bad things said about bikers. Okay. I've met some phenomenal people that are bikers. They've got essentially what amounts to a racial identity. Okay. And there's a whole hierarchy in that. Now, do I expect them to behave as I see the world? Not a prayer. Do I expect them to behave in a reasonable fashion when in society? Absolutely. Yeah, I have no idea how to pull that one off, world. There are days when I look at it going, why am I getting these geniuses? But it's because technology and I don't get along. And, I've had people try and explain it. That specific issue, not really. But I see trolls as people that are just, quite frankly, they're mentally stunted, in my opinion. They haven't figured out how to make themselves stand out as an individual. You know, do I have tolerance for people that don't think as fast as others? Absolutely. I talk to people the same way, whether we are talking an adult or we're talking child. Okay. I treat people, I start out the same way with the linguistics that I personally am comfortable with. And then if they're not getting the message, then I will downgrade the linguistics. Okay, and make it simpler speech, if you will. Yeah, I'm not entirely surprised. The reality is, world, the fact that some people are being paid to do that, are being paid to disrupt, is the same belief that I have that the big corporations that are building the viruses, that are building antivirus programs, have people building viruses and this is just my personal opinion. Okay, they have people building viruses either under their own roof or that they've hired to build viruses to increase the sales of their own virus scanners. Okay, and like I said, that's just my personal opinion on that. It's the same thing. We can take that into a much bigger area. One of the most common gemstones on the planet is the diamond. Yet it was a marketing mogul that turned around and went, "Oh, this is the most beautiful, the most valuable rock on the planet. So we're going to jack the price up here." Okay. And I will tell you, it didn't work. I mean, it worked like an absolute charm. For me, not so much. Okay, I remember one guy, he wanted to tell my life story. And he goes, he started laying it out, and he showed me the contract, and I says, "Not interested, not going to happen." He goes, "You don't understand how much money you're turning down." I looked at him, and I said, "I understand entirely how much money I'm turning down. What you don't get is how little I care. Money has never been a driving force for me. Now, my identity, I've always desired, and as long as I can recall, I've always desired the best of the best. Okay, but I do not desire to pay top dollar for it. And, you can call that being cheap, you can call it being frugal, you can call it what you will. I call it rational. Okay, it's like I don't care one way or the other what the outside of my house looks like. Okay, fortunately, I don't have to do the yard work, so that works out well. But my personal identity is done inside my house. The way my house is laid out, whether I've got too much junk around, whether I've got clutter I no longer desire to have, however that works. Okay, you have to take a look at it, ask yourself one thing. Are you content with you? That's where it starts, right there. Okay, if you're content with you, it will come across to other people. Okay, you'll find people are a lot more openly communicative if you're being honest with them. It was once, when you take a look at community identity, okay, or racial identity, every white person on the planet does not deal with things the same way. Okay, we aren't all alike. Now, I saw a post one day, and it's just something I would like you to consider. I saw a post on Facebook one day that was absolutely brilliant in my eyes. Now, it was pretty cut and dried that it was put out by a white supremacist. But do understand something very critical. It's not who put it out, it's what he put out that mattered. Okay. He goes, if one color of people makes a college that is only for that color of people, that's called racial awareness. Okay. If the white people do it, it's called racism. Okay. If a parade is made with one orientation of people, it's called racial or community awareness. If white people do it, okay, it's called racism. And the reality is we have to understand that having a racial identity is great. But when you start looking down your nose at other people, whether we're talking individual identity, I'm no better than you are. I'm no better than the next guy. Okay. In many ways, I'm worse. I mean, let's face it. I take a look at the entire social structure and go, I'm just not interested in trying to be politically correct anymore. On the other hand, I will absolutely tell you the political arena, the educational system, the religious situation. All of these are systems that are built properly. They have a decent backbone to them. What is being done with them may be a problem. Unions came into existence, and unions are another identity. People go, I'm a member of union such and so forth. Okay, they had and still have a purpose, but we have to understand the moment that starts interfering with the way society is running, whatever group it is, and this also applies, by the way, with political agreements, with people that are voting on one side or the other. The moment what is being pushed, the moment that starts causing a problem for society, you have a problem that must be identified. It's got to be corrected, and it's got to be done here. Okay, because the rest of the world doesn't change until you do. Okay, but if we get enough people standing up and going, no, this is not making sense. Okay, I mean, it was absolutely appalling one year, probably about 20 years ago now, when I found out that the death penalty in Canada had been abolished. I didn't, that side of it didn't bother me. It was the reasoning that they used. And the reasoning that I heard that they used was, and we're talking 20 years ago, it costs, they said it costs $260,000 to put someone to death. Now, I'm sitting there going, if that were in fact the case, would it not stand to reason that everybody in jail on murder charges was extremely well off? And we know this is not the case. Okay. But you have to look at, when we take a look at individual identity. Okay. Identify yourself as you are. If you're not content with something about the way your life is going, okay. And yes, I'm looking at the video right now, and I'm going, gee, this doesn't look like it's quite even, does it? Okay. I'm not removing the sideburns, but I should probably tidy them up at some point. People have asked me why I hang on to them, and it's like, well, they grow that way. But no, the reality of it is, and I think this is really what it boils down to, is I had a lot of respect for my father, and he had sideburns all the way up until the last month before he died. Okay, but that's part of my identity. The beard that shows up periodically is frankly because I'm lazy. Okay, but when you're identifying yourself as an individual, okay. Oh, okay. I'm just looking at what you wrote there, world. Politically correct is a term that first appeared in Chairman Mao's Communist Manifesto. And as such concept should be considered anathema to a free society. The reality of it is, the moment you start adjusting your speech in favor of trying to make sure other people are happy, you run into problems. You're going to make somebody unhappy. I was told years ago I had to learn tact, which is another way of saying learn to be politically correct. I looked at the person, I said, tact. And she goes, yeah, the ability to tell somebody where to go and then have them look forward to the trip. I said, I only have one problem with that. And she goes, what? I said, well, if I'm annoyed enough with somebody to tell them where to go, why do I care if they're happy? And that has been the way it's been my entire life. Net result, I ended up putting my foot in my mouth. Okay. You know, I mean, the way I figure it, when I, in answer to your question there, World, I don't know who actually makes the final decision. I do know for me, anything that is said that is deliberately derogatory and meant to make either an individual or a race feel less worthy than the individual uttering it. Okay, this is hate. Okay, now don't get me wrong. People can say, I don't like the way you dress. You know, like I mean, I've told people I would not wear what they're wearing, or I would not. I love tattoos, for instance. Okay, but I would never I don't look at tattoos and go, oh, that's terrible. You should never do that. Right? All people that wear tattoos are thugs. Some of the people I know that have tattoos are absolutely brilliant people. I personally like the artwork. I just am not willing to sit down and have it put on me. Okay. But for me, hate speech is simply that idea that you're saying something, that somebody is saying something, deliberately intending on hurting another person or on, making them feel less than what the individual uttering it is, or possibly to disrupt society. Okay. People talk about this whole idea of, let's overthrow the government. This is a bad idea. You want to see where that leads? Read Animal Farm. Okay. I think it was George Orwell that wrote it, but I also think it's been banned all over the place. But take a look at it. Anarchy is simply the time between organized governments or organized society. And rest assured, I've seen it before in many past lives. I've seen what happens when that occurs, and you guys have watched it happen in many societies where the governments collapse, where control collapses. Okay, and all of a sudden we have a massive problem. I look at it when I was growing up. I used to be called all sorts of things. And we'll start with the obvious, which I'm sure some of you went through. You wear these and people look at you and go and they used to call me Four Eyes Geek, a whole pile of things. Okay. The way I found to solve that problem was people got bored with me because they go, hey, Four Eyes. And I'm looking at them going, oh, yeah, I wear glasses. And my mother dresses me funny. Quite often, if my mom left me to dress myself, I'd be wearing clothing that did not match at all. At least not from a color standpoint. But I don't know if nobody clued into it. But the problem was I was colorblind, so everything was gray. Okay. So from my standpoint, it really boiled down to, instead of letting them bully me to much of a point, I simply learned to do the same thing. I'd end up calling myself other names. Now, did I fight with and do I fight with self-esteem issues on occasion? Actually, quite frequently. But we have to realize that the moment you start calling somebody down because they don't fit into the exact same mold you do. I mean, one of the most, that's where we have a problem. We take a look at it. When you go to Ireland, and I hope it's not as bad as it used to be, but 30 years ago, the Protestants and the Catholics, who both worship the same God, were at war with each other for who knew what reason. Okay. And when they were talking about each other, there was nothing but hate speech that came out of them. Okay. Same as if we go back, and I forget exactly when it was, late 1800s, might have been the mid 1800s. Down in the States, there was a neat little family squabble going on called the Hatfields and McCoys. In today's world, we have the Crips and the Bloods down in the States. I have no idea what the different groups are up here in Canada. Of course, quite frankly, you don't find out much about what the different hate groups are, the different groups in conflict, when you stay in your house. I've barely left my house for a week now. I'm quite happy about it. My energy level's up. I've got a lot accomplished, but that's because I've been looking at it going, I'm not content with the way my life is. So I'm changing it. Okay. And I strongly encourage you, absolutely, find a way to identify yourself. Find out what your strengths are. Promote what your strengths are. But do not presume and do not carry yourself as though your strengths will make you better than the next person. And I hate to tell you this, well, no, I don't. Making somebody else feel less about their ability, okay, is not a good way to make you feel better about yours. It doesn't work out the way you're hoping. Okay. I mean, it's just that simple. Anytime you're talking to somebody, treat them the way you personally desire to be treated. Okay, this is critical. When you're working on your own individual identity, your identity is yours, but your behavior has to be adjusted for the community, for the group that you're around. And this is where you start coming up with racial identity. You can have a different racial identity than your individual identity. This is just part of life. Okay. And it applies to every single race I've ever personally come across. Every one of them. And I don't mean just the humanoids. I mean your dogs, your cats, your grass, your shrubs. And yes, I do talk to all of the above. And no, by the way, I am not actually off my nut. At least not according to the multiple shrinks that I've gone and talked to. Turns out I have a very different way of looking at the world, but mentally speaking, I'm still all here. Now, I do question the findings personally, but that's me. And when we're looking at the world, okay, we have to realize that it is absolutely imperative that we start going, okay, this is my personal identity. This is how I identify me. But there's always, quite literally, every generation has their own run of people that decide they want to fracture off and become a statement unto themselves. Okay. Some of the more obvious ones that have come up for a while there was this whole thing about Black Lives Matter. Well, they do. Absolutely, they do. But if you eliminate the color and you just go lives matter, okay, and you don't add any qualifier to it, now you've gotten into a simple statement of positivity. The moment you get into a specific group, okay, and say they matter more, you're right there propagating, you are promoting, don't know if propagating is the right word, you are promoting separation, isolation, anger, you name it, you're doing it. Not anybody else, just you. That's on your hands. It's kind of like, we take a look at the politics. Okay, if we go back to the 50s, okay, we've got the liberals and the conservatives up here, and a few other parties. You guys have the states has the Democrats and the Republicans. But if you go back 50 years and take a look at the doctrine and what they were promoting then, you'll find what the Democrats are promoting right now and is the same thing that the Republicans were promoting 50 years ago. In Canada, the Liberals were doing what the Conservatives are doing. Okay. So, I mean, it's the same ball of wax. That is just sad. Yeah, I appreciate the info in the world. Yeah, I really do. The t-shirt design All Lives Matter has also been banned. So who's the genius that came up with the idea of banning something that says let's make this a better world. Let's just all lives don't matter. Somebody's more important. I'll tell you, in my personal opinion, I'm not more important than anybody. I may be more outspoken in some ways, but I'm not more important than anybody. Okay. Unfortunately, it's thoughts like that become the big problem. Now, don't get me wrong. There should be boundaries. People do have the right to say, if you're not dressed this way, such as no shirt, no shoes, no service. People that run their own company have the right to put that boundary in place and have that as a backbone to identify what their store, what their business looks like. Okay. But when we're talking about society, there is not a single individual that is worth less than another person. Now, I'm going to open a can of worms and I'm going to be signing off pretty quick here. This is just something for people to think about. Okay, when you're looking at the laws that are out there, so many people get off on a loophole. Okay, there was a conversation. There was a reporter that was asking a bunch of so-called mentally challenged individuals. Okay, and he asked them, "Do you understand the legal system?" And this one kid looks at him, and well, he was a young adult. He looks at the reporter, and he goes, "Absolutely." So the reporter says, "Well, can you explain it?" He goes, "Certainly. He who tells the best lies wins." Now, I don't myself. I cannot speak for the legal system on a head-on point. Call me square, call me anything you will. Never even got so much as a speeding ticket. Quite happy about that, by the way. How I managed to avoid it, I don't know. But I will tell you, we have to start on the whole, and this is that message that I really desire everybody to put out. Okay, is that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. But we've got to start treating people as equals. Every person on the street, every person living on the street is not there because they chose to be there or because that's what they like. Okay. That's just the reality behind it. Many people are there because being at home wasn't safe. Okay, I knew one kid that was on the street that her father did to her what nobody should ever do to anybody. So she was not safe at home and she was only 13 years old. Now, did she choose to move to the street? Certainly. But really, when you look at the reality behind it, is it really a bad choice on her part? And I agree with you there, World. I don't watch much of the news, but it does seem to fit. But then that's like I look at the tax system in every country I've ever seen that has taxes. Okay, they give tax breaks to the people that have a lot of money. This is backwards. If you're striving, because there is a thing with society, whatever race, whatever society you're dealing with, the strength it is only as strong as the weakest point. Now, in most countries, it seems that do have taxes of one form or another. Okay, and this has been going on since time immemorial. Okay, and it's been going on in more races than I care to count. But they can look at it and go, if you're making this much money, then you get tax breaks. Whereas the reality is the people that require the tax breaks are the ones that are not making the money. Don't get me wrong. I do believe tax is necessary to run the infrastructure of a society. It's absolutely imperative. Okay. But we have to realize that laws as they're being put out. Hey Terry, how you doing? Glad you made it. We have to realize that if we are going to turn this world around, we've got to start talking about doing things with everybody in mind. Now, don't get me wrong. I've got my own outlooks on what I feel is right, wrong, or indifferent in the way that certain things are done. And obviously, you've already found out when people ask me a question, I'll give you an answer that's right for me. It may not be what you like the answer of. Okay. I get asked questions all the time. I'll go, here's the answer. And they'll go, well, I don't like that. Okay. It's like, what am I supposed to tell you? Tough, you have to. When I was growing up, it was funny. Mom and dad, like most of you guys, mom and dad would turn around. Oh, is that this way already, Terry? Yeah. Are we really that close? I'm just checking the calendar here. Holy mackerel, that is tonight. Well, I'm glad one of us is aware. Thank you so much, Terry. I will be there. I just forgot what day and where we were. Time and I argue all the time. Anyway, mom and dad turned around and they'd say, "Stop crying." When we were little, "Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry for." And it always confused me. It's like, what do you mean? I've already got something to cry for. So I swore I would never use that on my own kids. So I modified it a little and I went, "Knock off the tears, or I'll give you something I consider worth crying for." Okay. It was a change that I made. It made sense to me. Okay. Now, the reality of it all is this: we have to look at the world in a very direct fashion. We are all part of this environment. Okay. We are all, most of the people on the planet that look like humans are human. There are some that aren't, but the massive majority are. Okay. That doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you worse. It just makes you an individual. Okay. But it's time we start looking at that. Now, on that note, given the fact that I actually have to start work here, and we are at, where are we here? Yeah, I'm going to have to bring this to a close because I have to get ready to go to work. And with that in mind, by the way, Terry, again, thank you so much. I love when people remind me what day of the week I'm on. Okay, but I do have to bring things to a close. So until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.